Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real Pat King Show. This is something different that I don't normally do. Mostly my videos are live broadcasts so that we can interact with the audience. But this video has taken a couple weeks for me to put together on the basis of I wanted to give it the professionalism and the credibility that it deserves. You see, in January, Sophie and I had the opportunity to travel down to Cuba and enjoy a well-needed vacation in Playa Cayo Santa Maria. And we had the trip of a lifetime, I would like to say, as well as the most integrated experience with the locals that I never have had in any vacation that I've experienced. And one of those interactions really inspired us to try and bring forth this story in the manner that people deserve. And it started off right from the airport. We met this very, lively tour guide who was doing our bus trip from the airport to the resort. And as we started to get talking to her, Sophie really hit it off with her and had this great conversation and started doing some, not really investigative conversations, but more inquiring of what life was really truly like for Cuban people. And then, as you would know, what we're seeing today in the news, you have Donald Trump putting embargoes on to Cuba and basically cutting off supplies that are coming in and out of Cuba. But I wondered why. I wondered what it was that Donald Trump would be doing this, because the Cuban people are beautiful people, very high-spirited, very, outgoing, hardworking, and truly you can see the light in their eyes when the tourists show up and how appreciative they are with the tourist industry in Cuba. So we asked them, like, when you're doing these kind of things, we're hearing different stories back in North America. We're hearing different scenarios that are happening. Would you mind elaborating on some of the stories for us? And one of the biggest ones for me was I couldn't believe that, after all this time, there was a different life in Cuba than I knew. And we interviewed several people in this piece, and one of them is this young girl. She was 18 years old, and she went into detail. And I don't know if our viewers know this, but at 18 years old in Cuba, you have a mandatory military obligation, and you have to go into the military for a minimum of 2 years. But if for women and women only, after 1 year, you can enroll into university. But men and women have to serve in the military. They get a 1 year mandatory military training, and then they can go into school. If you choose not to go to school after that 1 year, you have to stay for the 2 years in mandatory training. You get to stay for free at the base and are fed and given a small paycheck. And the small paycheck is about 35 pesos a month. School is free in Cuba, whether you want to be a teacher or a doctor or go to languages to work in tourism. Most people choose tourism for a better quality of life due to the tips after the military. You have one chance to go to school in Cuba. One chance. If you decline, you cannot change your mind later on. And that to us was, wow, okay, schooling is free, but if you choose not to go to school at that time, you're done. You never get an education. And that seemed to me to be rather concerning. So then I go deep diving into this. Okay, if you got free education, all right, can you go be a doctor? Absolutely. If your grades show that you can be a doctor, you'll become a doctor. They will educate you to be a doctor. But what they do is they take you, and after a certain amount of time, they make contracts with outside governments around the world that they will send their doctors from Cuba to learn different treatments, learn different scenarios, different skills in different trades within the doctor field. And they make a contract with these governments. And the governments will pay the doctors a regular doctor wage, such as in Canada, America, Jamaica, wherever, if they're doing their training in other parts of the world, it coincides with the wages that they would earn in those countries. So let's just take a round number of, say, $300,000 a year a doctor makes. I know that's probably not the amount, but let's just use that round number. In that round number, that person who is working as a doctor in another foreign country does not get that wage. But in fact, the country is taking advantage of that doctor, utilizing them to help them in their medical fields, but then sending their paychecks back to the government of Cuba. And the government of Cuba is taking their paychecks. So when we see instances in the news where politicians are stating they want to cut off the doctor program for Cuba, and you see mainly with Donald Trump and Rubio speaking on this, it's because what they are doing is they are trying to eliminate a level of income that the government of Cuba is taking and cannot utilize, and wanting to give it back to the people that are actually doing the job. But you see, it's not just for that purpose and that purpose only. I want to show you a video now that will really bring some highlight as to what it is like and why the United States is giving these sanctions to the Cuban people.
If the US embargo blocks everything, why does Cuba still buy food and medicine from the United States? That question exposes a big misunderstanding. And once you clear that up, the history makes sense. I explain. After 1959, Fidel Castro government expropriated land, factories, banks, and oil refineries. About $1.9 billion in US property was taken. International law allows nationalization, but only if you pay fair compensation. Cuba didn't. After negotiations failed, the US responded through law. How? In 1961, the Foreign Assistance Act. 1962, restrictions on the trading with the enemy act. That's when the embargo starts. And this answers the first question. Even with the embargo, Cuba imports food and medicine from the US. The US is actually one of Cuba's main food suppliers. Cuba also does business with Europe, Canada, China, and Latin America. But here's the real problem. They don't pay their debts. Cuba has defaulted on loans, restructured, missed payments again and again. So lenders stop trusting them. Credit dries up, trade gets expensive. This isn't about isolation, it's about unpaid expropriations, unpaid debts, and total state control. That's why Cuba is in this mess. Follow for more, please.
So as we see in that video, you have Cubans going to work in other countries, bringing back the money and giving it back to the government. But yet, when you're getting millions and millions of dollars and supplies from other countries, the Cuban government isn't paying their debts. And that is why the embargoes are being put on. I want to bring up some more instances of things that are dealing in Cuba. And I want to give firsthand knowledge to the people that we interviewed. Now, in some of these videos, I took it upon ourselves to make sure that we didn't show their faces, because out of respect, we don't want to cause any more issues for them. But some of them did take the time to talk to us and tell us more in depth about how Cuba is. And I'll get to that in 2 seconds, but I want to read you this. In Cuba, you can't purchase anything, loan or lease. Houses are generational wealth that is given to you by the government and hand down through the family. Most people live with their parents and their grandparents. That house is owned. There is no taxes, no mortgage, and it stays in the family. In Santa Maria, people who work in the tourism for a minimum of 5 years with good standing at their job have a chance to live in what's called subsidized housing that is nearby the hotel zone for easy access to and from work, including transport. Cars cannot be leased. The going rate for vehicles are the same as American prices. If you can't outright purchase a vehicle, you can't have one. Hard to get $25,000 for a vehicle on a communist paycheck. Usual paychecks are around 2,500 pesos to 4,000 pesos a month. People in tourism currently hitchhike to and from work. So there's a long causeway that they have to walk or hitchhike to get into these places. In Santa Clara, the area, most people live within 1 to 3 hours away from the hotel zone in Santa Maria and depend on the goodness of people for rides. I spoke with a woman. I asked, how does she remain safe at night? Hitchhiking home. She mentioned there's a workers' hostel available for $10 a night if they choose to not go home due to no rides available. That, to me, ladies and gentlemen, screams control. And I felt that I felt it upon myself to want to bring forth this story to shed the light on the tourism industry in Cuba and how dependable and dependent the people of Cuba in these areas really are with us tourists coming down to Cuba. I want to bring forth the story to back up my claims, and I want you to hear the voice of this man and hear how he describes to us how much tourism is a necessity for Cubans.
Make it alert.
Yes. But do
Travel.
you forget?
And then finally people hear that and then sometimes are scared.
Right.
Yes. But I want to know what you want.
Yeah.
What do you want? Do you want to work with tourists? Do you want to continue having people come here to give you?
Of course. For reason. That job is a good job.
Yes.
Yes.
I made my life because I work here.
Yes.
If I work outside, I don't have the same life
But
that I have now.
the general consensus from the rest of the Cuban people around Cuba
This is different.
Yes.
It's different.
So they don't want us coming here.
Do they or?
Or do they?
Don't want to.
Us tourists.
No.
Like the people that don't work
Remember,
out.
Cuba has two principal
Money, revenue streams. Yeah.
Is the tourists,
Tourism.
the tourists that come here, and the other things that's the doctors.
Doctors? It brings revenue?
Not doctors that work outside Cuba. Cuba sport doctors
Okay.
make a contract with any countries. The other governments make a contract. The doctor go there, work over there, and that country pay to Cuba.
Oh.
Okay.
They're going to make a good money with that.
But not the doctor. No, not the doctor. Yeah.
Okay.
So, you think that you share the same opinion as what you just said as other people? Everybody wants us to continue coming because we don't want to. Yes. Okay.
So what I do is I did a podcast. Like I do a podcast interviews. And yesterday we were in the market, and I was showing everything, and I had lots of people there. They were all talking and asking questions, and I get people saying, "Hey, stop it! You have no idea what to do. They don't want you to. They want you to stop doing it. The Cubans don't want us coming."
But remember, we have two kind of
Clients?
Clients that come from the United States. Maybe that's the problem.
Why you're
Cubans that live in the United States.
Oh.
That his family live
Ah,
here.
yeah.
And then that kind of people leave from here because they have a political problem here.
Yes,
right?
yes, yeah.
And then that kind of people want that the system changes.
Yes.
Yes,
And then that kind of people, they don't want to back here again.
Of course,
They
of
don't
course.
want to send money because they said if they continue to send money, the government taking money.
yes.
That's that kind of people that they don't want to. People come. Maybe that kind of people make fake news, talk about.
That's what I'm trying to
good
stop.
about Cuba.
Yes,
And then the rest of the world hear that.
yes.
And less people. For instance, now we have around 300 something clans. Years ago, in the same time,
Yes.
1,500.
Yes.
We're going to change that.
That's what we're gonna
I
try.
want to show you something.
So now you hear from that gentleman and how he talks about tourism is a big way of them being able to stay somewhat above the poverty line. And they speak about how our tips enable that lifestyle for them to be successful and provide back to their families. As we got into more in-depth conversation with these specific people that we were, fortunate enough to have these interviews with, we got into some more details, and they're very surprising when you hear what it's like in a communist country. Did you know that in Cuba, the government allows you to leave the country on certain criterias? You're not even allowed to leave the country of Cuba to go on a vacation. If you have a business and a home in Cuba, if you're a young person wanting to travel, they see that as an opportunity for you to leave, to flee the country. A person with a business and a home is given that up and less likely to leave because of the generational wealth they can provide for their family. And for that reason, the government allows travel. As the worker most likely needs to travel to supply the business for importation. Now, you have to apply for a visa from the government of Cuba. You have to have generational wealth, a business, family, a home, a farm, and that is the only way you will be given a visa to travel outside of your country. When I talk about this to people and I say, you're not even allowed to go on a vacation in the country of Cuba as a citizen under communism, that is your freedom to travel as we see fit here in Canada and in other countries. But the downfall to this is that the Cuban people don't even know anything outside of Cuba. And that becomes an isolated society. And the reason I want to bring this type of interview and this type of, life that people live in the country of Cuba is to empower people that live in Canada, that such as ourselves, who stand for our rights and freedoms, to see what it's like in a communist country. I know a lot of people were like, oh, you're supporting communism when you went to Cuba, Pat. In fact, I wanted to know what I truly was standing up for in Canada. I wanted to know what communism truly is. Because if you don't know, how do you speak on it? How do you stand up for your rights? And one of the instances that I received while we were interviewing down there is a serious issue that can happen to the people for just talking to me. And I'm going to play a video next to let you know on how serious it is just to talk to somebody who wants to get information on what life's like in a communist country. Here it is.
Okay. Okay. Oh shit.
So I had a feeling of that.
We're being watched.
A little bit of apprehension, right? Be careful. Be careful.
They take a picture of you and send everybody. Check. That's him there.
Is that what they did?
everybody needs to know that you are here and what you do.
Are we and that we're asking questions?
And then when you ask something, people, I don't know nothing.
Oh, okay.
And I knew that right away. I knew that would be
Because
getting
if
something
you,
this way.
I tell you something.
Yes.
After that you talk somebody else, you said that I tell you that.
No.
Never.
No, you never do.
No.
But the people don't know nothing about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And then sometimes scared because
I would never.
No, that's
So you hear that from that gentleman speaking about how even the staff was informed that we were there doing interviews and trying to, do some digging, and that the staff were scared. What you hear him talking about is how the staff would take pictures of us, and then they would forward it through their WhatsApp app and send it as we were walking around the resort to the staff members that were in other areas, to at least let them know that, hey, they're on their way. Be careful. Don't say too much, because they are in fear of being ridiculed and jailed if they speak out about what's happening in the resort with us doing interviews. And for myself, that showed a level of fear that the government has instilled in these people, because they can't even speak freely. They don't have that freedom of speech. They don't have that ability to express their concerns. So I kind of took a shining to this on the basis of the Cuban people are very vibrant, very outgoing, very happy, and down to earth, types of people. But imagine if they had some freedoms, a little bit of leniency to travel, to see the world, to be able to experience life outside of the country. You see, they're very dependent on us to bring that outside to them. And one of the ways we do it is when people go to Cuba, they bring humanitarian aids down with them. And in doing so, they appreciate more the effects that we bring and the goods that we bring more than they do the money. So what you can do when you go to Cuba and you pack your bags is you can donate your old electronics, you can donate generators, solar powered anything due to the rolling blackouts that they have. Car parts are a big thing because they have no trade on car parts, and feminine products for the women. You can tip in Canadian coins such as toonies and loonies, but at the same time bring enough bills that you can replace those toonies and loonies for them, because their banks will not take our toonies and loonies. They will only take our paper dollars. So as a courtesy, we take dollars down and we exchange them for their toonies and loonies. If you're packing and don't mind bringing clothes you probably won't wear anymore, but can wear during your vacation, you can donate your clothes to them as well. Cuba travel for comfort. You want to bring spices, sauce bags, such as soy sauces, hot sauces, things like that. When people talk about the food in Cuba is rather good, in my opinion. It does lack seasoning. And that's because here in Canada, we have preservatives in our foods that give it flavor. We give it a lot of sauces. We give it a lot of barbecue sauce. In Cuba, they don't do that. They use their vegetables to flavor their food. In fact, I've only eaten pumpkin myself in pumpkin pie. But the pumpkin that we ate there as a vegetable was absolutely delicious. And I had never known that pumpkin could be used like that. You see, here in Canada, we eat garbage compared to what people eat in Cuba. other things that you can bring to Cuba, such as vitamins, Tylenol, bug spray, prescription sunglasses that you can buy at a drugstore, school snacks, makeup, clothes, shoes, jeans, anything solar powered. You see, while we were there and we were doing our interviews, I looked into how can I give back to the country of Cuba. In my heart, I felt this urge, this want, this drive to support the Cuban people. And we got into speaking with one of the organizers of the resort, and they were telling us that in 15 years, there's an orphanage in Santa Clara that houses kids with no families. And I said, okay, well, there's an orphanage. I understand that. Orphanages are orphanages. And she mentioned to me that in Cuba, you cannot adopt. And in fact, these kids have to live at the orphanages until they're 18 years of age. Nobody can adopt them. They try to put them to family, and family will take them, and they try to encourage that. But if the children have no family, then they stay at the orphanage till they're 18. The government of Cuba will give them a house at 18 years old. But during the meantime, in 15 years of this orphanage in operation, only 3 tourists have ever gone to the orphanage to bring humanitarian aid to the children. That broke my heart. To know that all these tourists that come into Cuba are going down and giving their humanitarian aids to the people that are working at the resorts or into the cities and giving it to the people that are, in the communities. But nobody goes and offers help to the orphanage. So we got into contact with the orphanage. We got in contact with the head director there, and we want to do something for the Cuban people, and especially for this orphanage. Now, we were planning the trip to go back in April, but with these new embargoes, we see that there's going to be a little bit of a hindrance in that. But we have not forgot about them. We do want to put together a humanitarian package for these people in Cuba and travel back down as soon as the embargoes are lifted or tourism comes back to Cuba. And that is our goal. And we are going to visit this orphanage as Canadians to hopefully bring back So we want to do this trip down to Cuba and bring humanitarian aid to this orphanage. After being in contact with the director at the orphanage, we are going to get each child's name and hopefully delegate to each participant in the trip that wants to partake in this to assign them a child individually so that we can make it a more personable interaction. And we want to make it so that these children can give us 3 items that they so badly want that we can purchase and bring down and donate it to these young Cuban orphans. I truly feel that Canadians, and especially people who stand up for our rights and our freedoms in Canada, can really learn from this experience to understand what it is and why we fight for our rights in Canada, why it is that we want to live in this beautiful country with the freedoms that we have, and why it's so important for us to not allow our country to go in that direction. I think it'll be an eye-opener for you guys. I think it'll be an eye-opener for the world, along with Canadians, when we do get the opportunity to go back down. And we are putting forth and putting together a package that will hopefully take a bunch of us freedom fighters and human rights activists down to Cuba at a decent price so that we can give back to the Cuban people, and especially the children. If you enjoyed this broadcast and you enjoyed this interview, I appreciate everybody's thoughts, comments, likes, and shares for this. And I really encourage people to do your homework and look into why these things are happening to the country of Cuba. You see, the mainstream media, we're well aware, doesn't tell the truth all the time. And in fact, they paint a broad picture of what's really going on. I think it's our duty as humanitarians and as citizens of this planet to do what we can for everybody and to be that person we want to be in that world, to be the change you want to see. And if we can do this for the Cuban orphans, I think it might bring into perspective why it is we stand for our rights here in Canada. I appreciate everybody coming in and watching this. I really thank you a lot. And I really encourage you to make sure that you pay attention to this broadcast. We're not too far behind the Cuban people.